Billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I welcome you to another episode on the basis of Islamic thought and civilization. So today we shall be talking about the variables that are not covered by text. In the previous class we have discussed extensively on the variables that are covered by text and their details. So today, I want to talk about the variables that are not covered by text. These are divided into 6 areas. The first one is the means and method. The second one is the branches and detailed matters. The third one is custom and social norms. The fourth one is relative benefits and harms. The fifth one is judgment based on experience or probable knowledge. And the sixth one is purely worldly affairs. So inshallah we shall be taking each of these areas and we shall explain with detailed illustration. Now when we talk about means and method, we are referring to the tools, the techniques, or the process used to achieve a goal. For example, somebody is unable to have a child, and the person wants to have a child. Then a method is devised for the person to have that child. Then Islam will look into that method. The wasila is not only the means of having the child, but what is the method that the person has, that the process has passed through. So that is why we said it is a tool or the techniques or the process used to achieve a goal. So, and not only achieving a goal or to solve a problem. In Islam, scholars emphasize that means must be halal. That is, means must be halal and not just the end. The principles of al-mashaqqa tajlibu at-taysir allows flexibility in method to achieve a goal without violating Islamic law. For we to know that Almighty Allah also supported finding a wasila. Allah says in the Quran that Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, O you believe, taqullaha, fear Allah, wabtagu ilayhi al-wasila, and seek the means to him. So, and Ibn Kathir, according to him, says the word means refers to whatever brings one closer to attaining Allah's pleasure. So, and we have knew that we as Muslims, our intention is always very important in whatever we are doing. That is why for everything we want to do, for every goal we want to achieve, for every problem we want to solve, when we solve it all because of Almighty Allah, then we become closer to Almighty Allah. So when we talk about means, then we are talking about the things that are not specified by the text. So, but the text provide regulations. So a means can turn an action into obedience or sin, depending on how it is used. So let's take, for example, the issue of artificial intelligence. Yes. Now, when we talk about artificial intelligence, or let's say technology in general, Islamic scholars assess new technologies such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, by evaluating whether their means and method comply with Islamic ethics and law. When we talk about medical procedures, for instance, as a case study, such as organ transplantation, or genetic editing. These are all examined for permissibility based on their method and outcomes. So that is how the scholars, that is how they work. They look at a procedure, then they are going to look at the means or the tool that is used to achieve that goal. So for the organ transplantation or genetic editing, this requires that it requires medical intervention, whereby they look at what they have used. Maybe it is lawful, so if it is lawful, then the scholars will permit it. But if the means is unlawful, then it will not be permitted. So, for example, the organ transplantation must be done with the consent of the person that is donating the organ and the person that the organ is to be donated to. So, and it must be without harm. That is, the person that is donating an organ, after the donation, the person must not be harmed. So nothing should befall, no harm should befall such a person. So those things must be tested and be confirmed before it is it takes place. So that is why when we talk about means and method, the scholars, they look at what are the procedures. It's not only the means. The person that donates an organ for somebody, the transplantation of such organ into another person's body, the means will determine its permissibility. If the person, the organ is transplanted based on preserving life, maybe if the person organ is not, maybe the person organ has spoiled and they want to replace it, so to preserve the life of such a person, then it becomes permissible. And if it is to relieve suffering, it becomes permissible. If it is to restore health, it becomes permissible. So far, it aligns with the prophetic teachings. So that is the end. The end is all what we have stated. But the means to this end must also be halal. So when it is not halal, then it becomes not permissible, non-permissible. So if somebody that wants to die and they need an organ, and they now decided to drug somebody to take the organ of that person without the consent of the person to save somebody's life, so at that moment, the end is their intention is good, but the means is unlawful. So what they have done becomes unlawful. It becomes unlawful because there is no consent. So both the means and the end, they must be lawful. So that is what we mean by means and end. So for everything that are not covered by text, issues that are not covered by text, so the scholars, they look at the means and the method used in solving such a problem or in achieving such a goal. So we are going to take the second area. So that is the area of branches and detailed matters. So when we talk about branches and detailed matters, so we are talking about new legal issues. Islam is we have the usul of Islam and we have the furu. So under the furu, we have a lot of things that are entailed. Now, here we are talking about new legal issues. So, because Islamic jurisprudence branches expand to cover many things, such as modern financial instruments like cryptocurrencies, digital contracts, cyber ethics, and others. So, when we talk about detailed matters, we are talking about the rules, specific rules that are developed for issues that are new, that are recent, that are just novel. So such as bioethics, such as privacy, such as intellectual property, reflecting the detailed application of Islamic law to new realities. So now on this, we must know that the scholars, they pay attention to details before they give a rule. So they look at the issue, then they infer from it. Then they look at the process, they look at the means, they look at all the details, the matter, the details of the issue before they issue any rulings on it. So let's say, for example, the issue of cryptocurrency that we mentioned is just about buying and selling. So before the scholars, they will be able to give a detailed rulings on this new innovation. Then they pay attention to the details. What are the procedures? What are the means? What are the legal things? So what makes up such a transaction before they will be able to give a detailed rulings? So that is on our branches and detailed matters. So the third one is the custom and norms. So here we are talking about the urf and adat. So in Islam does not nullify the custom of the people. However, it integrates the good one and disregard the bad one, the one that does not align with the teachings of Islam. So when Muslims, that is why we find Muslims in different environments with different culture. So Muslims living in multicultural societies like Nigeria can navigate custom and social norms by balancing their Islamic identity with local traditions, provided this does not conflict with Islamic principles. So that is why Islam recognizes custom and allows adaptation to evolving social norms, such as gender roles and family structures, while Islam maintains core values. For example, the issue of balloon. So these balloons that are being sold during December period, or the balloon that they use for decoration, maybe decorating the hall during wedding or that. So they are the culture of some people, the Western culture, but we have adopted that culture. We adopted it because it does not go against any of the Islamic principles. So the issue of cutting cake during celebrations, maybe during anniversaries in schools, maybe a family get together and others, people cut cake. So the scholars did not put rulings on it as not permissible, because there is nothing, it doesn't negate the Islamic principle. So that is custom. That is the custom of some people. That is the culture of some people. So they use cake, they use balloon, and we adopted it because we realize that it beautifies the events. So Islam does not nullify culture. It only nullifies the culture that does not align with the teachings of Islam. So we have a lot of them. Let's say, for example, in Yoruba land or some parts or in Nigeria, when somebody dies, and the person has a wife, a young wife. Once somebody from the family of that person will have to marry the woman. So it's a culture in Yoruba land especially, but it's against the teachings of Islam. So such a culture is nullified. So it cannot be accepted. So that is why, however, when talking about culture, we have an example. When the Quran says, Ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf, that is, we should relate with our wife by doing good to them. So the ma'ruf there depends on the culture. It depends on the society. Depends on the place. Depends on the time. The ma'ruf that those that live with the Prophet that they knew, so from the ma'ruf that we knew today. We today, we take our wives to Chicken Republic, to Tantalizer, to buy them ice cream. And in those days, there is nothing like that. So if those people, they are rich, they have wealth, but they don't, there is nothing like all those type of fertility. And we today, we are having such a thing. So it means the ma'ruf then, we are from the ma'ruf now. The ma'ruf today, your wife can tell you that he's going to, he wants to travel to Canada for holiday, and you are in Nigeria, and you allow her. That is your own definition of ma'ruf. So ma'ruf it depends on the custom of the people or the environment that the person lives. So Islam does not negate custom, it only integrates the good one and disregard the bad one. So let's move to the fourth one, which is relative benefits and harms. So when we talk about relative benefits, this involves weighing the pros and the cons, that is the advantage and disadvantages or positive and negative outcome of an action or of a choice. The ruling of Islam, one of the principles is dir'ul mafsada, dir'ul mafasid, muqaddamun ala jalbil masalih. That is, to prevent harm is a given edge over over benefits. So anything that will cause harm, we take cognizance of it and take it very as something that is very important. So let's say for example, due to the things that are happening in our society today, in the past, mosques are always opened day and night, but today mosques are now closed. In the night they will close it. Even if somebody comes and says, please, I'm a traveler, I can't find somewhere to sleep, please can I sleep in the mosque? The management of the mosque will say no, because of what is happening in our society. Because you didn't know the person might be a criminal, and when you house the person inside the mosque, then they believe that the authority of the mosque, they knew about it when the person is caught. So they look at the benefit of mosque is to house everybody day and night. So, but they look at the harm, that is, if somebody is housed in the mosque and the person that is housed is a wanted person, and they found him inside the mosque, then there will be problem for the community that is where the mosque is. So they look at the harm and they look at the benefit. If the harm outweighs the benefit, then they drop the benefit and make sure that the harm does not occur. So, and we have another example whereby maybe in the mosque they said, okay, they started scanning everybody, maybe facial recognition before you are allowed inside the mosque, just because of the issue of terrorism or something. So if they realize that terrorism is rampant, then it will be very important for them to look at it. The harm there is that when you start searching people, scanning people, it means you are invading their privacy, which is harm. So, but the benefit of scanning them before they enter the mosque is more than that of the harm that is done to individual. So, but if there is nothing like terrorism, there is nothing like threats, nothing like all those things, nothing like fear, then scanning them will not be important. So, because it will bring more harm than benefit. So that is why the scholars, they always one of the things is that relative benefit and harm. So these cannot be found in the Quran and the Sunnah, but they are guided by the Quran and the Sunnah. So that is why they said they are not covered by text. So we use our rationale. To bring out the rulings based on the ruling of Islam. So let's take the next one. The next one is what is it called? A judgment based on experience or probable knowledge. So before we move to that, we have to know that the issue of what is it called? Relative benefit, which is maslaha, it is very central in Islamic jurisprudence. So most schools, that is in Islam, it is used to derive rulings that provide welfare and prevent harm, especially when texts are silent. So that is on the issue of a relative benefit, which is maslaha. So now the fifth one, which is judgment based on experience or probable knowledge. Yes, I forgot a verse that I should have mentioned on the issue of custom and norms. There is a verse of the Quran where Allah says, "In tuti'u akthara man fil ard yudilluka an sabilillah." That is, if you obey, yudilluka an sabilillah. If you obey most of the people upon the earth, they will mislead you from the way of Allah. So, but trusting that Islam does not nullify culture, but it takes those that are good. We cannot adopt all the cultures. So, the culture of Yoruba, we adopt it into Islam. The culture of Igbo, we adopt it. The culture of Hausa, we adopt it. We adopt all the cultures. Then there will be problem with Islam. So, and Islam needs unity, wahda. So we only take the culture that is good, then we leave those that are bad. So that is on that. So let's continue. On the fifth one here, which is judgment based on experience or probable knowledge. The Quran itself encourages reflection and reasoning. When Allah says in Quran 47 verse 24, Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ? Do they not think deeply in the Quran? أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَقْفَالُهَا? Or their heart is locked up. So, here, when we talk about judgment based on experience, we are talking about technical or scientific issues that we as Muslims, we must think about it. We must think about those things. So it refers to making decision or assessment using practical experiments or practical experience, intuition. So in the absence of tests. So here we rely on empirical knowledge or informed guesses, because these become important for ijtihad and qiyas. And because these qiyas and ijtihad, they are widely used by scholars to issue legal opinion on unprecedented issues. So we have different issues that are unprecedented, like the issue of space travel, the issue of digital currency, the issue of artificial intelligence. So the scholars, they rely on reason, analogy, and the current knowledge. So with this, Islam encourages the use of empirical knowledge and scientific discoveries to inform ethical decisions. So let's say, for example, the issue of brain death. The scholars, before they can issue ruling on the issue of brain death, then they must consult the doctors, the medical doctors. They are the one that knows better about it. So when they consult them, they ask them, does brain death also mean real death? So if they say brain death also means real death, and the organ of such person is to be transplanted or to be donated to another person, then the scholars, based on the opinion of the doctors, that okay, if it means real death, maybe 90% said real death, while 10% said not real death, then they will give permissibility based on the aglab. So that is the majority of the medical doctors that give their opinion. And if most of them say no, it's not, doesn't mean brain death, it doesn't mean real death, then they gave, they said it will be, they disallowed it, they disapproved it. So that is why the scholars, they give rulings based on experience of the experts in those fields and based on probable knowledge. So that is on judgment based on experience and probable knowledge. Now the last one, which is the sixth one, is pure worldly affairs. Here when we talk about pure worldly affairs, we are talking about career, about family, we are talking about matters that relate to everyday life, practical concerns, or secular issues. These have no relationship with ibadah. So, but the way we do it can later be translated to ibadah. So, here, Islam promotes managing worldly affairs, that is our career, our family, our social responsibilities, in a way that complements spiritual growth. So, let's say, for example, in a school, being a teacher is a worldly affair. Being a medical doctor is a worldly affair. Being an engineer is a worldly affair. Now, when in a school they want to decide the curriculum that will be used in the school, it is those that are experts in curriculum that will decide, not the scholars of hadith or the scholars of fiqh. So the scholars are going to work with those experts in that field to make sure that the curriculum will be in compliance with the principles of Islam. That's all. But those that will decide the content, they are the experts in that field. The function of the fuqaha there is to make sure that the content, they are in line with the Islamic principles. So that is why when we talk about worldly affairs, then Islam wants us to balance worldly affairs with our spiritual growth. So let's say, for example, during the time of the Prophet, during there was a period of pollination of palm trees, and the Prophet told them to do it away, and it doesn't work that way. The next year that they wanted to do the pollination, the Prophet told them, Antum a'lamu bi amri dunyakum. you know better about your worldly affairs, so you do it the way you always do it. So that is on that. So we have a lot of things that are worldly affairs, like the issue of being a governor, a president, a councillor, an ambassador, or other things. So they are worldly affairs. However, there are laws guiding those things. So that is why Islam principles guide, provide guides for ethical governance. So for human rights and social justice. So whereby Islam emphasizes accountability and welfare. So when you become governor or president, you must make sure that you are accountable. So you took the ticket, you are elected as a president or as a governor, you must be accountable, and you must make sure you look after the welfare of those people that you are ruling on. So it is very important. Islam does not separate the sacred, which is the religion, and the secular, which is the worldly affairs. So the worldly affairs is affairs itself is part of divine stewardship. That is, managing worldly life ethically is also an act of worship, if it is done according to Islamic principles. So that is why I said the worldly affairs, there are things that has no relationship with Islam, but the way you do it, it has no relationship. I said it has no relationship with ibadah, but the way you do it will now translate into what? Into ibadah. So that is why everything we do as Muslims, they are referred to as ibadah. But they are worldly affairs, whether it is worldly affairs, whether it is not. So whether they are things that are commanded by Almighty Allah or not. So everything, the way we do it will translate to ibadah or to a sin. So if you become a governor or a president and you are not accountable, you embezzle money, it means that act becomes a sin. So that is where we are going to stop today. So inshallah, in the next episode we shall be taking combining constants and variables. So that is what we shall be taking in the next class. That is al-jamu baina al-thawabit wal mutaghayirat. So in summary, variables are broad and they are dynamic and expanding. So they allow Islamic thought to remain adaptable, and they operate within principles, not outside them. So all the variables, both those that are covered by text and those that are not covered by text, they operate within the principles of Islam. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.